First sheet again. Big opening. Pass 5. Pass 10. Verbal's a man. And he goes all the way to the 15-yard line. 17 yards of the carry.
Welcome back to Believe in Badgers on the Believe Network, presented by betonline.ag and Oak Bridge Wealth Management. I'm Matt Perkins, joined as always by Badger legend, the Hebrew Hammer himself, Matt Bernstein. Bernie, how you doing today?
Dude, every day seeing your face is a holiday, seeing another, teammate, even though we spanned a couple years in between. It's just always so fun to chop it up on a podcast and talk to dudes who played, who put the W on their helmet. Eddie, was it the motion W when you got there? No.
Actually, it was the old W.
Whoa.
So yeah.
I can't wait to hear. I can't wait to hear. I have so many questions, Eddie, about what Madison was like, in the 80s. And then you were there for pretty much the beginning of this whole new world.
Right.
But let's go into Matt Perkins. Let's finish this up. Let's
get into it. Like Bernie said, we have former Badgers defensive back Eddie Fletcher Jr., class of 1991. It's so good to have you here, man. Thank you so much for being here.
Appreciate it. Appreciate y'all for having me.
Of course.
So, Eddie,
yes.
Eddie, you're still on the leaderboard, right, for interceptions in a season?
I think I got knocked off. I was in the top 10 up until last year. I think last year I got moved out of the top 10.
Yeah, because Rico had 7 or 8 or whatever last year, and so he was coming for some of those records.
Right. Oh yeah, especially as much as they throw the ball now. So, oh yeah.
So you know what? There could be an asterisk because the amount of times they threw the ball was way different.
Much different. Probably had maybe 20 passes a game, 20, 22.
And you picked a lot of them. So that says a lot, though. It says a lot.
Before we get into it, want to remind everyone tuning in that we are presented by betonline.ag. BetOnline is your number one source for all of your sports betting needs this season. From baseball, golf, soccer, right up to all the top fights in MMA and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 different slot games. Head on over to the website today to get in on the action. Use our promo code BELIEVE for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. That's BLEAV. Bet online. The game starts here. Also want to remind you that we are proud to be brought to you by Chryst and Oak Bridge Wealth Management. Attention pro and future pro athletes. Chryst is the man that you need to connect with to get your money right. At Oak Bridge, Chryst and his team of professionals will create a comprehensive financial plan to set up you to navigate your lifestyle and future market conditions. Oak Bridge specializes in wealth management for professional athletes. They understand all of the pressures that athletes face on and off the field. Chryst and his team will set you up with a bespoke plan to make your money work for you off the field so you can focus on what you do best, perform on the field. So get in touch with Chryst on Instagram at Oakbridge_Anicete. That's Oakbridge_ANICETE. Or head on over to their website at oakbridgewealthmgmt.com. Oak Bridge Wealth Management.
Eddie, let's start with young Eddie. This is where we always start. Like what's young Eddie like? And is Eddie, how do you get into football and go from there?
Okay. Well, I'm from Texas. So football there's church and football. It's like a religion. So you start playing when you're 4 or 5, I think I started playing flag. And then it just progressed from there, went from flag to, tackle as soon as possible. I probably was like 9 years old, started playing tackle, 9, 10. And that's just what it's been. But I played everything back then, though. Back then we all played every sport. So you just move with the seasons. So, but the funniest thing of all is my first sport that I ever played was soccer. So that was the first thing my parents enrolled me in was soccer. And then from that, just, T-ball and everything else. Yeah.
Which one was your favorite?
You have to ask. Football's always.
Did you know immediately that football was going to be your favorite, or did it take you a minute to warm up to the sport?
Well, I kind of noticed I wasn't going to get too tall, so I knew basketball was probably going to be out of it. Baseball, I was too scared of the baseball after it got a certain period. Like guys trying to throw a curve and getting hit with a baseball, that just wasn't, didn't sound fun. So, football was it.
So you put a sport where dudes running through each other full speed.
Exactly.
So you don't get hit by this little baseball.
Don't want to get hit with a baseball. No, that is the worst.
But you want to be coming up and laying the wood on, running backs. It makes a lot of sense, Eddie. I get it.
Yeah. So, but that's pretty much what it was.
Well, paint us a picture of high school Texas football back then. I mean, is it everything you see on like all these movies and everything? The town shuts down. Everyone's in the stands. It's pandemonium.
Right. Well, for me, it's a little different because I'm in the city. But when you get into the suburbs and the outer areas, towns do shut down and they travel. They do the whole thing. But in the inner city, it's a little different because we all kind of know each other because you've been knowing each other since elementary school. And the high school that I went to, a lot of guys came from all over the city that came to my high school. We had what we call M&M transfers, minority, majority transfer. So guys would come from all over and you meet some of everyone. But once I got to high school, pretty much football was it. Like junior high, I still played football, basketball, and ran track. Well, I ran track in high school also, but those were the main things. What else were you asking? Go ahead.
Your high school experience, though, this isn't just any high school for people who don't know.
So,
Dallas Skyline High School is like one of the high schools. I think did you share a high school class with like Grandmama, like Larry Johnson, the basketball player?
And that's funny you said that. I actually grew up with him. Yeah. He's in my class.
And I'm trying to think.
We went to junior high together, John B. Hood Middle School. And then we also went to high school together. I used to try to get him to come play football because I wanted him to play quarterback. Because just to help us out. And he would always try to get me to come play basketball, and I was like, I'm not doing it. So he was like, well, I'm not coming to play football. But Grandmama, and also I went to high school with the other Johnson.
One of my childhood heroes, Michael Johnson, the sprinter, who was world record holder in the 200 and 400 for a minute.
He's the class before me, and Larry Johnson's in my class.
So what is it like being at this high school that is just producing prodigious athletic talent all over the place? What was the competition like?
It was a little different than it is now. I mean, then when y'all probably came along, we still had a lot of guys that left or that came out before me. We had guys that went to OU, Dante Jones, a guy by the name of Terry Crouch, played O-line at OU. And then there was a lot of guys. To me, while I was in high school, the class of 85, that was the class. Like they had guys go Wake Forest. A lot of guys went to Kansas, Nebraska. So it was good. Competition, how do I want to put this? I really didn't see it as competition, to be honest. One good story is, so after my freshman year, that spring, they wanted to move me up to varsity. I was going to be the first sophomore to ever be on a varsity, ever in the school. So but I ended up playing JV because my dad went to him. He's like, look, is he going to be playing all the time or are y'all just going to be putting him in sparingly? Because if he's not playing, then he needs to just play JV where he can just get the reps, where he can keep playing. So I ended up playing JV, but the whole spring I practiced with the varsity. And they had me a flanker, actually. We call it flanker. We didn't call it wide receiver. But they had me a flanker. And I was mainly known to be a speed guy. So,
but you were playing quarterback though and at the JV and then at the varsity level in high school, if I'm not mistaken.
No, well, actually, I didn't play quarterback till my senior year. Coaches came to me and asked me to play quarterback my senior year because so in Texas we had no pass, no play. Our quarterback would always, for whatever reason, not make it after that first 6 weeks. And so we would be without a quarterback. So the coaches came to me and asked me to play quarterback my senior year. And that's how we ended up doing that. And we actually ran the spread. Believe it or not.
Whoa.
Yeah, we ran the spread, but it wasn't where we had like 3-1. Or yeah, it would be 3-1 and me and the running back basically in the shotgun. But it wouldn't be a read. They just tell me to hand it off or not. So that was their version of the spread. So this is 1986, and that's what we were running, the spread. And we had a tough season. We finished 2-6-2, and we still almost made the playoffs. That's how competitive it was. We were 2-6-2 and almost made the playoffs. We won our last game.
So when did you think or figure out that you could take football to the next level?
It was kind of like, that's just what you do. It was like, this is what I do, football, that's just what I do. So what else am I going to do? It's kind of one of those things. I don't think it was ever really a thought like, I'm not going to play. It was just a matter of where am I going to play. So
it's the mid 80s.
Right.
What is the recruiting process like, and how does Wisconsin come in from being so far away?
So I was mainly being recruited Southwest. So back then you had the Southwest Conference, and I live in Dallas, so the main school is SMU. So I was at SMU almost every weekend, just hanging out or whatever, go to games, different stuff like that. But SMU ended up getting the death penalty that year. They ended up giving them that year, and there was a lot of us just within the city, which is interesting. We were like the first. I always look back. We were like the first group to kind of go outside of even Texas to go to school. A lot of us guys went to Iowa, Oklahoma State, which is not much further, but I mean, we all went just some everywhere. Some went to California, different things like that, because everybody was on. SMU got the death penalty. TCU was on probation. Texas was on probation. The only school that really wasn't was Texas A&M. That was the only school that wasn't pretty much on probation. If you kind of go back and look, there was a run for Texas A&M. Then after that, it was Houston. That's when Andre Ware and all those guys came along a little bit after that. That was during that era where SMU, TCU, and them couldn't compete. So back to the recruiting. Yeah, I was getting recruited pretty much by most of the Southwest Conference, especially like SMU, TCU. And then I was being recruited by the University of Tulsa. And that's how I ended up at Wisconsin. So let me go back. One of the funnier stories is, so A&M that year went to the Cotton Bowl. They really hadn't recruited me all year, really hadn't called or whatever. They called me to come to the Cotton Bowl. My dad had answered the phone. He was like, hey, A&M is on the phone or whatever. I said, tell him I want to talk to him. He was like, what is wrong with you? I was like, they're just not coming to the, you're late. Like you didn't want me in the beginning, so forget it. So that's pretty much, I just kind of shut the door on A&M because of that. But the coaches at Tulsa, which is Coach Morton, they were at Tulsa, and then they ended up getting hired at Wisconsin. So they just continued to recruit me going to Wisconsin. So that's how I ended up there for the most part.
But Eddie, in your mind, are you saying like I could be at Tulsa, and then where on earth is Wisconsin? Like
exactly
you must have these thoughts.
Had no idea. I just knew they were in the Big Ten. I didn't even know when it first heard it. I had to research it to find out they were in the Big Ten, right? Because the only schools I knew they were in the Big Ten were Michigan, Ohio State, and Iowa. I really didn't even know the other schools, the other 7 schools. So, yeah, that was it. And then I had a buddy that actually went to Iowa. That was from he was a couple of years. I think Hashway. He's like a couple of years older than I am, and so he was at Iowa. So that made me feel a little more comfortable about going that far away.
Did you know?
That's how I get there.
Did you get a chance to visit the school before you committed?
Yes.
Was it in the middle of winter?
Yes.
Was that a shock?
Yes. So
they bring Texas dudes always in the winter.
There's me. There's another guy by the name Raphael Robinson. He's from East Texas. He actually ended up coming to Wisconsin. And then there's 3 other guys. They're from Waco. So we're all on a plane. So we have to fly from Dallas to Milwaukee. And it's getting dark. So, we get to Milwaukee. We have to catch another plane from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We're flying American. We get on one of those little prop planes. And we had to walk outside to get on the plane. Like, we could reach up there and touch the pilot, like, make a left right here, that type of thing. And so we're just on, it's just this little bitty plane, and then we get off, and it is freezing. They actually said that they didn't think any of us would commit. They said it was probably like the coldest day they had that year for winter. So, but yeah, Raphael and myself, we ended up committing to Wisconsin. But yeah, it was freezing.
So, Matt Perko, you got something?
What do you do on that visit while it's so cold? And what sold you on Wisconsin with this point? Like,
what sold me on Wisconsin?
Yeah,
come on. Really, being in the Big Ten, being in the Big Ten back then, to me, the Big Ten was a premier conference. The Southwest Conference was a premier conference, but the Big Ten was it. Like Michigan, you see them on TV, and I'm like, if I'm not playing there, at least I'm playing against those guys. I'm like, if you're not playing with, you're playing against some of the better talent, I thought, in the country. So that was the biggest thing. But the trip, it was freezing. It was a good time, though. It was different, very different. Coming from Dallas, it was very different. Very, very different.
We have a lot of guys who come on the podcast who were the Barry Alvarez era. Who,
right.
You do the same things. You went to, you had a guy host you. You went to the Avenue Bar. Now it's not the Avenue Bar. Then you sat in his office, and he's like, "We want you to play here," and you were with your parents. That's not your experience at all. What did you do that week? Like, do the coaches? What's the interaction with the coaches? Are you walking through? That's old school Camp Randall too.
Yes. So I really don't remember it all. I mean, it's kind of a blur. But I do remember my host. His name was Robert Williams. I think he was number 4. He played defensive back. But anyway, that was my host. I do remember that. He was a real nice guy. But I don't remember where we went out to. I really don't. But I do remember, like, that next morning they took us to the stadium, and we go up in the press box. And so you look out over the field from the press box, and that's where we had lunch. So they had like steak sandwiches and chicken sandwiches and stuff like that. And that's really about all I remember, to be honest. That's a good point. I don't really remember too much more, but it was different. It was.
You're jogging my brain because the press box when I showed up was the only thing there. That whole other section was not built. It was built during my. Wow, I remember getting up that. Wow, that brings back some. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, the press box was the tallest thing on that side.
Do they offer you that day? Like, that's when they offer you?
I believe so, because when I came back home, I told my parents I was going to Wisconsin. My dad did not want me to go to Wisconsin. My mom was okay with it. It was my dad. He did not want me to go to Wisconsin. And I always tell people this is a good story right here. So signing day, actually, Coach Gonzalez, that's who recruited me. And then y'all might know this name, Lovie Smith. They both come to my house. So we're sitting there, they give you your letter of intent or whatever. So I sign it and I push it to my dad for him to sign. And he's like, I'm not signing it. He was like, I'll pay for you to go anywhere else. I'm not signing it. So my mother ended up having to sign it. Because he just wouldn't do it. And it's funny because when I tell the story, I know most people don't believe me, but I actually found my letter of intent. My sister was cleaning up and sent it to me. And we had to document the time. And you can see where, like, I may have signed it at 3:10 my mother signed it at 3:15. So 5 minutes, you know how long 5 minutes can be. 5 minutes had passed before someone else signed it. It wasn't like 3:11, 3:12. Yes. So we're all just sitting at the table. Yes. So yeah,
Man.
that was
All
wild.
right. So you're signed to Wisconsin. You're excited. Like, you're coming up. What's day one? What is when Eddie Fletcher Jr. shows up? What is day one? Does your dad drop you off?
Yes, my parents drove me up.
Whoa!
We drove from Dallas. We drove up, stayed in the hotel that night, then reported to the seminary, Holy Name. So we had to. Yes.
Wait a second. Day one for you was at Holy Name?
Well, day one yes. We all met at the seminary.
Oh boy.
But it's just the freshmen.
Yes, for like 2 days.
No. We were there for, it felt like 2 weeks. I'm serious. We were probably there for we were there for a very long time before the upperclassmen came. But yeah, day one, show up. They have us all in a room. And no, I do remember this one guy. This is a good one too. One guy, I'm unloading the car or whatever, and I got a trunk. And one of the guys, I'm thinking, he comes and just picks it up. And I'm like, man, my dad took me and my dad both to put this in. It was John L. Williams. He was from Houston. He just picked the thing up and put it on his shoulder and walked it up the steps. And I'm like, damn, this is what it's going to be like? I'm like, he got to be an older guy. Then come to find out he was a freshman with me. That was crazy. But no, day one, we just ended up, we were all in the auditorium. I remember us all being in the auditorium with our parents and everyone. And then they kind of had all the players to leave and took us in another room. We didn't know that was going to be the last time we saw our parents. The next time so basically they took us to another room, and then we went somewhere and we started doing physicals. Kind of like in the military, we just go, I don't know if y'all still did that. You go out to the different stations, and all we did, we just saw our parents go by, they were leaving. Like, we didn't even get to say bye. So you're like waving at them from a distance, like, wow, we're bye. That's it. Like, so that's kind of how they split us up. It wasn't no like, hey, say goodbye to your parents or whatever. It was just, and that was it. That was the beginning of the first day.
Well, one of those guys that came in with you and played your same position was Troy Vincent. And
he came in after.
Oh, was he a year after? Was he a year after you?
He's a year after me. I ended up, yeah.
Okay.
We just ended because he didn't redshirt.
Okay, that's what it was.
So that's how we're in the same graduating class.
Okay. Well, but you guys ended up playing. You guys ended up playing for a long time together. So, what was? Correct. Did you know when you met Troy that he was going to be someone who was one of the biggest figures in football for the next 30 years, like both on the field and in terms of his work in the players' union, his work with the league, and everything that he's done?
Right. So the funny thing is, we used to all play basketball. We always think we can play basketball, right? So we used to play basketball over at the Nat, not the Nat. Whatever's over by Lakeshore. It's over by, was it the Natatorium? That's over by Lakeshore. There used to be not the surf.
Yeah, no.
I think it's an Natatorium.
So we used to play basketball over there all the time. So we kind of all had even within the football team, we had our own little teams, right? So Troy comes the next year. We had our little team or whatever. Troy comes the next year. And I end up seeing, we play the same position or whatever. So now it's, it was basketball time. We're all playing basketball. And I'm like, dang, he can play. So I end up kind of booting one guy off the team because I told everybody, I said, hey, we got another guy. I said, he can play. They're like, man, we don't need anybody. I said, no, we need this one. He's good. He is good. So Troy, I always knew Troy was going to be special. He was, 6'1", could move the way he moved. He was very impressive. Very, very impressive.
So during that redshirt season of yours, though, I assume you're playing scout team during that year. What was the hardest part of the college game for you to adapt to, and what was your experience on scout team?
The hardest part to adapt to, not playing, that took a minute. I think it helped me, but it took I think my confidence may have took a little hit because I've never experienced that in my life before. But I think that part, but then just understanding it like, okay, I'm not ready. because there was a lot of things I didn't know. I didn't know what cover 2 was. Like, I had never been taught cover 2, different things like that. All we ever played was man or cover 3, and that was it. I didn't know all those different coverages and different things. So just learning the language and everything. So that part, that kind of came easy. But then just understanding the size of people, that took a minute to adapt to. Just seeing, how large people are. Goes back to camp. This is a good story. Y'all will like this. So for 2 weeks we're at camp. It's just the freshmen. So finally we're all really comfortable with each other. So we're all sitting in the auditorium and the upperclassmen show up. So I'm sitting on the front row, kind of leaning back, got comfortable. Sits Paul Gruber. I don't know if y'all know who that is. He's our starting tackle. He sits on one side of me, and Glenn Derby sits on the other side of me. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking straight up and I'm like, these are the biggest human beings I have ever seen. And then so they asked me, they're like looking, we're sitting down, but they're looking down at me. And they're like, what position you play, little man? And I'm like, DB. DB. So the first thing they tell me is like, don't stand around any piles. And I'm like, what are they talking about? So I go ask some of the other DB, I'm like, they're like, hey man, don't, they're telling you the truth. Because if you stand around a pile, you will get taken out by one of those old linemen. So that was one of my biggest experiences right there, is just getting adjusted to, the size of these guys. It was just incredible.
I mean, Gruber was one of the best offensive linemen in the country,
Yes.
So I imagine that must be, a little bit of a shock coming from someone like that.
Yes. I'd never seen a man that big anywhere. Andre the Giant in wrestling maybe, but nowhere in person. So, but yeah, that first year, it was just getting used to playing scout team. And then it became fun, right? And then you really start thinking about it. And I'm like, okay, I could be playing scout team, or I could be the third team deep corner or something. How many reps am I really getting in practice, right? And at least in practice, I'm going against the best that we have, right? I'm playing against our best tight ends, our best wide receivers. So at least that's who I'm learning against, right? As opposed to being in, like I said, being down there and not redshirting, you're playing against other scout team guys. So how much better can you really, really get, to some degree, right? That's kind of how I see it. So that's kind of how I started justifying it for myself, is I'm going against the best that we have. That's the chance if I can do well against these guys, the coaches will have some confidence in me and so forth.
And one of those guys you were going against was the future head coach of the Badgers, and Paul Chryst. What is college Paul Chryst like? And could you peg him as someone who was going to be a future coach while he was still playing?
Paul Chryst was a quarterback. That was his initial position. Our coaches, so we ran the veer, and they implemented it immediately. It was probably not a good idea, but they did that immediately. So they ended up moving Paul to tight end. Paul was always just a cool guy. I mean, he was even keel. He was nice, easy to get along with. Even to this day, I'll text him every once in a while just to say what's up, see how he's doing. But he was just always just even keel, just fun to be around. I didn't hang out with him a lot, of course, because he's a few years older. But yeah, he was just an even keel guy. He was, and as far as the coaching, I could see it because his dad's a coach. And then his brother ended up coming, and he was a GA at Wisconsin.
Jeep, yeah.
So I figured coaching is in his blood, in the family. That's kind of like the family business for the Chryst. They'll all end up being coaches. His daughters are probably end up being coaches.
So Eddie, so you redshirt?
Yes. So our first year we were actually pretty good. I think we were either going into conference, we were either 2-1 or 3-0. We had beat Hawaii. Hawaii was like ranked in the top 25, and we beat them at home. They had Al Nogo on the team, and we beat them. So we were, it kind of felt like we might have a pretty good team, right? And our quarterback was Bud Keys. So one of the things our coaches did, it's probably the worst mistake ever, probably what got them out of here. They benched Bud Keys, who is like a prototypical quarterback. Like, he's destined to go, he's what a quarterback was back then. He is that, like the look, everything, the height, and they end up benching him and started a freshman. That was tough. That was, when we look back on it, I mean, you ride with whatever your coach say, but when you look back on it, you're like, that was probably the pivotal point because we were winning. We were 2-1. I mean, like I said, we were either 2-1 or 3-0.
Yeah, it was 2-1 with a really close loss to Utah.
Yes, there you go. So it did make sense to, when you look back on it, why'd you do that? So, and then the next game we go into Michigan and we get so this is it. So I don't travel. We go to Michigan to play. So in order to see the game's not on TV. So we're listening to it on the radio in my dorm room. We're listening to the game on the radio. And so I have this running joke or whatever. So after the game, we get crushed. They beat us bad. I mean, it was like 40-something. I don't even know if we scored.
49-0 was the final score.
See, I knew.
Thanks, Matt Perkins, for the fact check.
Yes. So we get crushed. So we have study tables. So we're all like in study table that night, the freshmen, on Sunday. And so the guy overseeing it was one of the GAs, Lombardi. His name's Lombardi. So anyway, so I'm sitting there telling everybody, I said, yeah, man, I'm sitting there listening to the game. I said, all you hear is touchdown, Michigan. I said, I go to the bathroom, come back, touchdown, Michigan. So everybody's just laughing. I mean, everybody, and the head coach walks in. And he's like, oh, you guys are having fun, huh? Or whatever, because we're supposed to be in there studying. But it was just so funny because I was like, yeah, go get something to eat, come back, touchdown, Michigan. I'm like, dude, did y'all even play? No, we were just cracking jokes. But yeah, that was tough. And so that was kind of like the beginning of a hard season the rest of the way. Because I think, but we did have one good one. I think we beat Ohio State that year.
Yeah, you did. You
beat Ohio State that year.
Mm-hmm, yeah, that was your the lone Big Ten win that season. What was it? Yes. Ohio State.
Yeah, in the rain. Mm-hmm. So whenever y'all hear about the rain, it's supposed to be something. That's the mystique. If it starts raining and we're playing Ohio State at home, we're supposed to win that game. It's over. It's in their head. It's just what it is. It's destiny.
Well, and so this year is Coach Morton's first year. Were there still, obviously you come in right after, Coach McClain obviously tragically passed. And what was sort of like the feeling and the vibe around the team that year in during that transition?
I think there was a big disconnect between players, errors, or whatever. Big disconnect. It was kind of like, because we're all Morton's guys, mm-hmm. So the older guys, I don't want to say resented. They, just didn't know where to put their frustrations, right? So I think we felt some of the brunt of it. So the relationships, and I think that's probably part of the reason why we had a hard time for a few years, just because of the relationship. It was never a full team. It was like those guys and us, and that doesn't work. Which y'all know that doesn't work.
And do you find that there's some of like your experience with maybe what's happening right now or last year with the team?
I couldn't really tell. Now, looking at the team last year, I was like, if we don't get this right, this could go bad pretty quick. And I started seeing things of when we were there, when I was playing and the coaching change and whatnot. And it's like, if they don't get a hold of this, this could go south bad. And if it does, it's not going to be good. And I'm not just talking about that season. I'm talking about for a few years. And so hopefully we'll bounce back this year. Team looks a lot different, a lot different kind of players, just the whole look. A lot of guys. Yeah, I've never seen so many tattoos. I'm a Badger. It's like every guy has a tattoo, but that's cool. I mean, that's what it is. But it's just a different. You can see the difference. At least I can. I think I'm pretty sure everyone else can too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, so in your first couple of years, and you have three years there with Coach Morton, that on the record sheet are some pretty lean years. After going 3-8 that first year, you got a 1-10 and 2-9 and 88 and 89. What again, like, what's the morale around the team? How are you guys like? Because when you're on a team that loses, I mean, this is in any sport. This is on my freaking high school football team, my freshman year when we were 3-8 and sucked, and no one wants to be there anymore. But I can't even imagine at sort of the next level what that's like. What is sort of, how do you guys keep going every day? Like, what makes you keep coming back?
I think it's just because you're an athlete and you've been doing it for so long. You always, I don't know if we were just delusional. We always felt we could win. At least I did. I always felt like we could win the next game. I always just believed that like we can do it. All we just got to do is get one, and we can like keep this thing going. Just always felt that way. I mean, granted, it took a while, but I just always felt like we could. The next game, I just felt like we have a chance as long as we, But hey. But it was tough. A lot of guys, I think, did start checking out. I think once Coach Alvarez came, you had – that's why I know in his book he talked about all the guys that he said he ran off or whatever. I think a lot of guys were just done, like within. Mm-hmm. And they knew that they just needed to move on for themselves. So I think that's more so what it is. I don't necessarily think he ran them off or whatnot, but I think guys were just done. Like in my class alone, we probably had 5 or 6 guys that took medicals, like from bad knees. I know one guy, he had like a degenerative knee, and then, the other guy, like bad shoulders, like early on, and they just never healed. So they end up taking medicals. So that was just in my class, maybe 5. That came in with me. When I say my class, the guys that came in with me. Mm-hmm. There's probably there's me, Raphael, Tony, and Jerry Huggett. We were the only ones that finished it out, I think, out of that class, maybe 4 guys.
Well, do you feel the change coming, like a couple bad seasons? Do you feel something's happening? Like, do you know something's happening before Coach Alvarez is hired? Like, how what's going on in your brain at that point?
So this is funny. So when they fired our coach, when they fired Don Morton, I was actually like, I'm out of here. Like, because I felt like you didn't want him. That means you didn't want me. That was kind of like my feeling, right? That you didn't want him. So obviously you don't want me here or whatever. So I go to our defensive coordinator, who's also the defensive back coach, Coach Daly. And I go and sit in the office. I'm like, Coach, I'm not feeling it. They don't want you guys. I'm like, I'm out of here. And he looked at me. He's like, Eddie, where are you going to go? And I was like, good question. So where am I going to go? There's no portal, there's no portal or anything like that. Hadn't talked to anybody. He's like, where am I going to go? I'm just basically a kid that's just upset that, like, the way things are going and just trying to, get out of here. Like, this was just over. So that was my first thought and I think that was even before they hired Coach Alvarez. Mm-hmm. I had that conversation with him. He was just like, where are you going to go? And I was like, good point. So I was thinking,
good question.
I did exactly.
Good question.
If I left, I was going to have to sit out a year, mm-hmm. and I would only had one more year to play.
And you wouldn't have been there for the start of something historic in college football. So Eddie, I want to talk about your career, but this is such like a pivotal point in Wisconsin football. Even to this day, we still talk about Coach Alvarez as this this almost mythical creature that changed Wisconsin State's trajectory, not just this. What was like early Coach Alvarez like? What like you're sitting in a team meeting? What's the first day like?
He is full. He's pretty much probably the same as y'all probably know him. I don't know. Was he y'all's coach?
Yep.
Did he coach y'all? He was. I mean, just figure he was what? He was only like 40 something. So he was full of energy. He was, this was his first head coaching job. So he wanted to do well. And like losing was not acceptable.
Sure.
I kind of get that from him over time, right? At the time, it just kind of felt like when he's talking, been down this road before, okay, we'll see what's going on. Now, it was a lot different. After that I think what he did was after that first season of him seeing like what he actually had, then he understood what he needed to do. So that camp that we had, that spring after his first season, that was worse than seminary. That was the worst. I mean, your legs were just dead. Like they worked our asses off. Like every day. We had these stations and boxes every day. You had guys that were just bleeding from their knees and shins because they couldn't get up on the box or legs were just dead. But he worked our ass. And I mean, it ended up paying off that next year. I mean, because we went 5-6, right? And I actually had a conversation with him about it. I was like, his whole thoughts or whatever. And he was like, he said defensively, he felt like we were okay. He was like, but he said we couldn't get 200 yards of offense.
Yeah. And
I don't know, since Matt, you're the stat guy, go back and look. Our offense back in those late 80s, we were like one of the worst in the nation. Not just in the team, like in the nation. Our offense.
You're running the veer. Were you guys still running the veer offense when Barry showed up?
Yes. Well, Alvarez, of course, changed it. But those first 3 years that we were running the veer.
I mean, you got veer, dude. So whoever doesn't know that's a triple option, pretty much. It's a read triple option. You need littler linemen because you're not blocking a bunch of guys. And you need a running quarterback, not a passer. So, like if Barry takes over and changes the offense, it's exactly like our team coming and changing the offense and taking up, like you're expecting dudes who don't do that to do something completely different. It's crazy to think like you could have overnight success. But I love that because did you have JD? Was JD hired early on with Barry?
The strength guy?
Yeah.
Well, it was actually Coach Reardon, and JD was his assistant.
Yes.
So we had Coach Reardon, who came from.
So Coach Alvarez comes, and he's like, "Dude, we're ticking everything up. We're going hard in the weight room. We're going hard on station stuff. We're gonna practice our butts off." I mean, he's a Pennsylvania dude. He's a lunchbox guy. Right. What was the emotion in the locker room when now this is you guys are coming off of 1-win, 2-win seasons, and I'm assuming the offseason was hard, but now you got this dude who's like, we're not accepting that anymore. What's that feel like?
I honestly don't think as a whole everyone had bought in. Mm-hmm. And I think he even felt that too, right? Like I said, I've had those. He was like, a few of us finally did buy in. I'm not going to say, maybe that's not even the right word. It's not that we didn't believe in it. It was like we've just been through, kind of like what Matt was saying earlier, Perk was saying earlier, we have been through so much losing, so much disappointment. It's like, how do you kind of get through that to the other side, right? Mm-hmm. You don't even see a light. You almost, you're just kind of almost going through the motions. Just trying to get through practice, right? You're just trying to get through. Mm-hmm. It's not even necessarily in your mind, I think, maybe trying to get better. You're just trying to get through it. because it's just, you just taking so much. They probably needed sports psychologists back then a lot more, the beatings we were taking. But yeah, it was tough. So yeah, it was a lot different. They were, and they were very boisterous, very loud, gonna call you out. Everything was go, and I get it. Looking back at it, as a grown man, I understand where they were coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's interesting. JD said you guys had so many good dudes, good pieces, you guys just didn't play together. Like you just weren't. He's like Don Davey. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Which is so interesting. But so to walk us through your career, like, what was your first, time on the field like? How great was it, picking a ball off, playing in the Big Ten, which you always wanted?
No, it was not. So my first time on the field, we go to Miami. We go to Miami to play. So this is when they have Steve Walsh. I want to say Jimmy Johnson was the coach. They have Bernard Clark, linebacker, Greg Mark, defensive end, defensive end. Cleveland Gary's the running back. So we go there. I don't start. Actually, I think Troy starts. He ends up breaking his hand. He gets it caught between two helmets. And so someone else plays it, but then I get to play a little bit too, right? So my first time on the field, I go on, and we have what we call a squat corner. And so I turn to do it. I was supposed to funnel the guy to the sideline or whatever. I turned to do that, and it felt like 4 guys just ran past me so fast. I was like still in one space. Like I never moved. I'm just standing there, right? So they called me immediately off the field, and they're like, Coach Daly wants you on the phone. So I get on the phone. He's like, don't worry about it. It'll slow up. I had no idea what he's talking about because all I'm thinking is, I didn't see but one guy over here when I lined up, but 4 of them ran past me. I don't know. And no one had the ball. But later on, I understood what he meant. So it was like, just take the game slow. Quit trying to see it all. Just focus in on what you're trying to do, and it'll all come to you. So, but that was the funniest thing. I laugh about that all the time. I'm like, so many guys ran by me. It was crazy. That was funny. But that was probably the only time I got on the field that day. I think I may have been on the kickoff team or something like that, but that was about it. And we ended up losing like 20-something to 6 or something like that. But we caused maybe like 4 turnovers. They had this one play, I'll never forget. They bring the back out, and he runs up the seam. And our free safety, he was a headhunter, Greg Thomas. Greg would hit him. I mean, one of those like, what's the guy's name that played for the Broncos? Atwater?
Steve Atwater.
Kind of like he hit Christian Okoye.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen that?
Oh, yeah.
That's how he was hitting Cleveland Gary. Every time he come up the seam and catch it, I mean, Greg would lay him out. And, I mean, he caused probably like 3 turnovers. And actually, they only scored on a defense. They only scored like 17 points or something. Bernard Clark, we run the veer. We pitch it. He picks the ball off on the pitch and runs it back for a touchdown. That's the kind of game that was. So
for anyone listening, it's like the Georgia Tech offense of last couple years, pretty much.
Right.
To like, if you're going to compare it to something, like that's what you're going to compare it to.
That was my first experience on the field. That in Miami, in the Orange Bowl, which was raggedy. I thought we were so excited. I'm like, oh, I get to see the Orange Bowl. I'm like, oh, this thing is. My high school stadiums were better than this, but
yeah. Well, Eddie, I know we're running out of time, but
okay.
I mean, you're there for this epic moment, and although it's not so epic, right? Like you were literally living through these ups and downs. 5 and 6 is not a terrible season coming from 1 and 10. So
no.
you take it with it. But did you ever stop and like say, man, Barry's going to be something, like this team's going to be something special. Wisconsin will be something very special.
Right. Well,
in the future?
That year we played Iowa State. So to me, this was the turning point for what I saw. We played Iowa State and we beat them. I think we may have beat them like by a point or two. I think they missed a field goal at the end or something like that. We ended up winning the game. And so I'm in the locker room and I'm just crying, right? I'm just crying. And so our defensive back coach, it was Coach Jett, he walked up to me. He was like, "What's wrong with you? Like, we won the game or whatever." And I'm like, "We finally beat somebody."
Yeah.
We finally, I mean, even though they're a Big 8 team or whatever, it wasn't a MAC team. It wasn't a Mid-American, we finally beat somebody. And that's all I could keep saying. It was like, we finally beat somebody. And so to me, that was the turning point. I was like, okay, this could be something. That we finally won a game. And, we had some pretty close games that year. I think most of the games were like one-score games that season that we ended up losing.
Well, I want to take you back to November 16th of that season, because as someone who wasn't playing, to me, that is
who did we play?
That is the turning point. And also,
is that Minnesota?
My sixth birthday, at Minnesota, because you guys as a squad at that point had a 23-game long road losing streak.
Yes.
A 19-game Big Ten losing streak. Hadn't won on the road since 1986. Hadn't won a Big Ten game in 3 seasons.
Exactly, Bernie.
And you guys go into Minnesota. You go into the Metrodome. And win the Axe for just the second time in 8 years or so.
On the last play of the game.
The last play of the game, Mel Tucker breaks up the pass.
Exactly. Man-ball separation. That's what we used to call it. That was his thing. Man-ball separation.
Walk us through that game and that final moment, and what did that feel like for you and for the entire team?
And I never even touched the axe. That's what's the trip. And I was a senior that year. I didn't even get to go get it. But that was epic. That's mainly what of all the part of the game. I really just remember the end, because our free safety had went down, and Tuck, who really hadn't been playing, has to come in, and they're probably like on our 20-yard line or something like that going in. So, and if they score, they're going to beat it. We lose. So I just remember that they ran something into the end zone, kind of in the corner end zone, and Tuck, I mean, he went through it. And the ball went one way and he went the other way, and we knew that was ball game. That was it. So yeah, that was nice. That felt good. That was also getting the monkey off our back, winning a road game and so forth. And I think it also gave the coaches a lot more confidence about what they were doing, right? That they were on the right path, of what they're trying to accomplish as well.
And that was Coach Alvarez's first Big Ten victory.
Right.
His second season there. So, I mean, that definitely, I can also imagine,
on the road,
is big. Yeah. And you follow that up with another Big Ten victory to sort of close out your senior season. What did it mean to be able to win back-to-back games as your last 2 games in a Badger uniform?
See, Perko, I actually don't remember. Who did we play the last
Northwestern.
game? And we actually,
32 to 14.
Oh, we actually scored points.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, but I don't really remember that game. I remember the Minnesota game. I always thought that was the last game of the year. I didn't know we played getting old. So
I can't tell you the teams we played don't worry.
Honestly, I remember more of the tragedies than I do the victories. I can tell you more of the tragedies than I can the exciting victories for the most part. But no, that was good. It was good. I was happy for us. I was happy for the coaches, and I was happy for the younger guys, right? Because you never want anyone else to experience. I never wanted another Badger to experience what I experienced, right? Those amount of losing seasons, I would never wish that on any other Badger, ever. So it just wanted nothing but the best for him.
How proud are you and the guys you came in with who stuck it out, through Coach Morton being, fired, Alvy showing up, busting your butt. How proud are you to see where the program has gone, to say, like, we were that first year, like we built the foundation, set a tone for what, Alvy could achieve.
Right. I never really, a lot of people say that, but I never really look at it that way. I really look at it like after we left, that's really when I know he was building something, but to me I think those guys just really took it to another level. And I like to give them all their props. That Rose Bowl team, because even that year before when they went 5-6 after us, they were a good team and they were losing even closer games. So, we did what we could with what we had. And, but it's just enjoyable. It is. I love to see it. I love coming, especially being in Dallas. I love to talk. I don't know if we can cuss on here.
You can say whatever you want. I
love to talk to anybody about the Big Ten. I love it. So, and it's even better to see Wisconsin. And then, because you got to figure, you really don't see Wisconsin in Texas, in Dallas, right? So I'm coming back home and I'm talking about, nobody knows anything about Wisconsin. They're like, so when they start winning, and then now you see more people here that probably are from UW and so forth, it's very exciting and it's cool. And it's all because of that. I mean, it changed those guys winning and the program turnaround. It changed everything on that campus. That campus, I mean, everything felt that they could win or they could achieve greatness. I think once the football team did it, I think it spilled over to other parts of other programs as well. Programs in school.
Oh, I got one more question for you.
Yes.
And then Matt Perkins can finish it off. He's crushing it. My favorite thing Barry ever said, because he's one of the most confident, let's say that's a good C word, confident dude. He says, you better buy your tickets because before long, there'll be nothing left or you won't be able to buy them. When you're a player, what on earth are you thinking about when he says that day one at a press conference?
Has he looked at our team? What does he see that I mean, has he looked, did he see what we did the year before? Like, that was, I don't know. Like I said, you're so, I think it's probably for anyone, when you're in it, you don't really understand like what you're really a part of, right? Mm. And what's really going on. You're just kind of going through it. And and then once you step back and once you're gone, you kind of can look back and you're like, damn, okay, now I see it. I understand. I did have my issue. Now I'm gonna go back. I have a lot of stories. I've told Bernie a few of them, but when coaching them, so our next year, my last year, there's another Raphael. We're the same class. He plays strong safety. They moved him to he and I in the same position. So now we're both playing boundary corner, which is a physical corner. Well, Raphael's a lot bigger than I am. He's 5'10". I'm like maybe 5'8". He's 5'10", 210 or so, So they move him. So now I'm like splitting time my senior year. So that's also part of what I was going through that last year. Is like, especially early on, is like dealing with that. But like I said, once I come back and look back at it, I understand what they were doing. I get it. But then when I was in it, it was kind of like, is this a shot at me and my talent or whatnot? But then I understand, because if he'd have been playing strong safety, Reggie Holt wouldn't have been playing strong safety. So now you had Reggie Holt and Scott Nelson as the safeties. So now when you come back the next year, you have some veteran, somebody back there that's been there before and so forth. So I kind of understood it once I look back at it. But at the time, that's kind of how I see it. It's like, it wasn't a good feeling. Like, why am I sharing time with another guy that's a senior? We're sharing time like that. But yeah. And then Troy had the other side by itself, of course. So
my final question, did your dad ever come around to Wisconsin?
My dad came up there once.
But did he come around on the idea of you being there?
I think so. Honestly, I think he did. I'm not really sure, to be honest. I think he missed out. I think for him, my dad was always my coach up until going to school when I started playing for the school. So Little League, he coached me pretty much in everything. So I think that was a part of it. And so just not being able to see, because people weren't traveling like that. Parents weren't traveling like they do today. It wasn't so easy to just come to games. So I think that was, I think that was part of I want to say not necessarily hurtful, but kind of, he missed that part, right? Of us sharing that part, game day and that type of thing. So, looking back on it, I think that still probably bothers him. But who knows? Who knows, really?
Well, you can't.
He's never said, I don't know. I mean,
speaking of dad,
look, I've never seen him wear anything with Wisconsin on it. Ever. Now that I think about that, I've never seen him with a hat or shirt or anything. So I don't know. He made me think about something there, Perk. I'm gonna have to talk to him about that. Get him to wear a shirt.
I was going to say, you have to get him some for his birthday or for Christmas.
Well, Eddie, this is seriously such a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for jumping on with us, chopping it up.
Yeah, that flew by.
Flew by. Telling us what the 80s and early 90s.
It was tough.
Your experience, Coach Alvarez. Yeah. I mean, it was definitely a tougher time for the Badgers, but dude, I think you guys are the glue. Like, you held the team down when Coach Alvarez needed guys. You guys were there for him, and that's what I think, because as you can see, other teams, like, new coach comes in, teams fall apart. It's not right. It happens. It happened in the 70s, and it's still happening today. Right. And even with our Badgers, there was a rocky ups and downs. Who knew if the guys were coming back? Like, it's all these crazy things. And
it's gotta be.
I think there are dudes in that locker room who say, I'm going to stay and I'm going to be a part of this because I love Wisconsin. Maybe not the coaches or maybe not what's going on politically, but I love the team and I love my guys, and I'm going to be here. And I think that's a testament to you to say, we're going to beat Coach Alvarez dudes. And you know what? If we win one game, we still do it, but we're going to be here for him. Right. So I think that's really cool, man.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Appreciate you guys for having me on. Well, first time I ever did something like this. I'm sweating bullets over here.
Well, you're doing fantastic.
Feels like that Miami game all over.
And I did confirm you are still top 10 all time in career interceptions for Wisconsin. You are number 9. Oh. We're tied for 9th. So,
really?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I can. You are tied for 9th with Nate Odoms, one of the all-time greats.
He is definitely one of the all-time greats.
My guy, Sojourn Shelton, Antonio Finellis, Shane Carter, Craig Raditz, and Dave Fronek.
Wow.
Yeah. You guys are all tied for 9th all time. So there you have it. So the top 10 interception machine in the history of Wisconsin football, Eddie Fletcher Jr. We appreciate.
Now I feel better about myself.
Yeah.
Okay. We appreciate you joining us here on Believe in Badgers on the Believe Network, presented by BetOnline.ag and Oak Bridge Wealth Management. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. And until next time, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.